Welcome to Anaadi, Conversations about Wisdom. In today's episode, we have Dr. Rahul Malushte, who is a practicing homeopath for last 29 years. Dr. Malushte has integrated different healing modalities to his homeopathic practice for a better well-being of his patients. Today, let's hear from him how family constellation plays an important part in healing. So today let's hear from Dr. Malushte itself how the family constellation works in the healing process. So doctor, will you be able to explain us how you have integrated all these modality in your practices?
I'm a homeopath, and the basic philosophy of homeopathy when we deal with patients is to understand them in an unprejudiced way. So, we need to understand the person as he or she is. All these modalities which I integrate with homeopathy have a basic philosophy of being an observer to yourself. It is also about taking responsibility of your own healing. So, when we heal, we do not depend on medicines or we do not depend on the therapist, but we take responsibility of healing ourselves. And that is how all these modalities are aligned with homeopathy. That is how I integrate them with homeopathy.
Oh, lovely. So, using a family constellation as one of the modalities, if you can tell us how this works, what is this modality about, and how is it relevant to the problems that commonly I'm facing, like any patient who's facing, how do we relate to that?
Okay. Family constellation is a technique, it's a modality where you simulate a family structure, a family tree, and understand the dynamics happening in the family. So, constellation we understand as constellatory stars or constellation of stars, or so how people are placed in a family system and how their interactions influence the creation of certain beliefs and which lead to illnesses or to certain patterns which run through the family. Now, when we are talking about constellation, then different people take up roles of the members of a family. So, for example, if I am doing a constellation for you, you will select certain people who will represent your family members depending upon whatever issues we identify, whatever patterns we identify. And when these people, individuals, step into the field, that is when they are able to download information about what has happened to each of this individual in this family structure. And then the whole dynamics unfolds because they are able to actually feel the emotions, the sensations which that individual has passed through. And through these interactions, we are able to understand what exactly happened, why people behaved the way they behaved, why certain beliefs came into being, and how these have got passed on from one generation to another. Once we understand these beliefs, then we understand how they have influenced certain reactions in us as individuals, or why our relations are the way they are, why we are suffering from certain illnesses. Because when we understand patterns which we are experiencing, our limiting beliefs, we understand how they are creating illnesses in us at the through the subconscious influence. So when these patterns unfold and when we identify them, we work on them, that is how we are able to release these beliefs by healing the dynamics in the family structure. Once that happens, we are able to bring about a balance in the order of love. That is what it is called. And the flow of love begins, and that is what leads to healing in a family constellation.
So, does this only work on a emotional level, or the healing also happens for the, when you say illness, or also happens on the physical illnesses? Both are covered?
Yes. So, being a doctor, that is my first concern, because patients, when they come to me, they
Yes.
come for their physical illnesses. We understand the illnesses which run through the family, so we call them as inherited diseases or hereditary disorders. So in these situations, medicines do help. But what happens is whatever you have inherited genetically, how can that be helped? So that is where family constellations comes into the picture, because when you are inheriting certain patterns and beliefs which are leading to illnesses, so when you are healing the patterns, you are also healing the illnesses. So genetic disorders, diseases which are running in the family can be helped through family constellation. So for example, there was this patient who had come because problem where the family had vision issues. So most of the male members in the family had problems with the vision, either glaucoma or retinal detachment. And when we created a constellation for them, we understood that somewhere in the family there was this fear which did not allow people to see the truth. They were trying to run away from the truth. They didn't want to see the truth. And when this was traced back to the earlier generations, we understood why and what trauma had been caused. And the future generations, that is the person for whom we are doing the constellation, then detaches himself from this pattern and says, this is no longer my responsibility. I do not take responsibility for whatever faults my ancestors have created. And that is where we are able to break that pattern and stop the illnesses from progressing in the future generations, or for that matter for that individual as well.
So how normally you say so beautifully that when you heal the past, you also heal your future generations.
True.
And I think this is one of the classic examples for anyone to understand that how we see it as a one particular issue, but it's not just related to me, but it just coming because of some belief system, and it's not just what we see. So in this whole structure, when we are processing now, like for a yoga, if somebody going for a yoga, it will be based on physical movement, asanas, pranayam practices, breath work. When somebody goes to sound, okay, there is a voice, there are sound instruments. How does this part, these sessions gets formulated? I mean, they are based on meditation. They are based on, what happens in the session?
So primarily we first identify what is the problem or issue with which a person has come to you. Based on that, we try to identify what are the patterns or what are the beliefs, the core beliefs behind these patterns which exist in the family. For example, a person comes saying that I'm not able to lose weight. Right? Once you go a little more deeper, you understand that the person feels very burdened, carrying a lot of burdens. So that connects with the weight. Now the burden, you go a little more deeper, you understand maybe the person is taking on a lot of responsibility and feels responsible for everyone in the family, not just my family, my parents, my siblings and everybody.
Yes.
So once you identify this pattern, then this pattern is what we are going to work through the constellation.
Okay.
And in most cases, you will know that this is a pattern which has been inherited either from the mother's side or the father's side. So when we are able to create a constellation, and when a field is created, so the constellator creates a field which connects to the universal consciousness.
Okay.
And when the representative individuals step into the field, that is when they are able to understand and emote all that those individuals have experienced. Once that happens, then the whole story unfolds, and we are able to, in this case, if we say, I am carrying a burden of responsibilities, then the person for whom the constellation is being done is able to see that whole drama unfolding in front of him. And when you are an observer to that whole experience, that is when you realize, oh, this is where things went wrong. This is where my perception is creating a problem. This is where my father or grandfather, thought it was his responsibility. It's coming from. And then maybe it was true for that earlier generation.
But it's not applicable to you today.
But it is no longer applicable to me. But because I unconscious loyalty towards my ancestors, I also take on that pattern. So when you are able to then detach yourself from this pattern and you say, okay, I return back the responsibility of your burdens back to you, I have my own life to live, that is when you feel unburdened, and it will reflect on releasing you from these patterns and even your illnesses.
So they are basically, what I understand is these are practices which are done in groups,
Yes.
and they are followed in the group. So there is no, people don't feel uncomfortable following that in the group.
Not really, because when you're in a group
Huh.
and somebody's role playing for you, right? The people you choose to represent you, somewhere or the other, are also resonating with you. That is why
Oh,
you have
lovely.
chosen them. You may not know that,
But that's always
but
how you choose.
That's
Because
always
the
how you
question
choose.
comes is, how do I choose?
Right.
That's where the come from. Ki, oh, it's there, but how do I choose? Because I don't know them.
Right.
That's why I asked you that question.
And
then.
it's the best thing that when you don't know them and they don't know your background, and yet they are able to download all that information, right? So that authenticates it, because somebody who doesn't know anything about you and is able to tell you what your mother was feeling, what your father felt, and how their relationship was, and even those things which maybe even you never knew because you were a child at that point of time. But those people who are representing you also in some way or the other have experienced a similar pattern in their family, and that is why unknowingly you have chosen them. So that's the beauty of the field, that it attracts the right kind of people to role play for you.
Lovely. To break the pattern, I'm sure there will be certain practices that I will be have to incorporate as well, because like we say, I have to take the responsibility for my own healing.
Right.
So what happens? What to have go on the path of own healing and having the awareness now that this is where it's coming from. What is a ideal practice that one needs to follow post the session?
So during the session, at one point, the constellator will replace your representative and will ask you to stand in the field. So the first and foremost thing which happens at the end of the session is that you are now able to understand and feel where, by standing in the field yourself, as to where your pattern originated from, what are your emotions, what are your conditionings which are leading you to create these difficulties. Then towards the end, when we are able to bring about a balance, there are certain healing statements which are said to different representatives, members in the constellation, which allows you to release yourself from this pattern. Now, consciously being aware that you have healed these patterns and practicing with awareness that I am no longer going to fall into the same trap again. Now, I am going to be able to see my mother in a different light, my father in a different light, or for that matter, my spouse in a different life. And when I consciously follow these, that is when I am able to observe myself and prevent myself from slipping back into the same old patterns. Also, there are times when you can use these healing statements and say them like affirmations. So, I no longer carry the burden of the guilt of my father or whatever. So that is something which can be practiced. There are certain rituals. So sometimes it so happens that some injustice has happened in the earlier generation towards somebody. So unconsciously carry that guilt. But after the constellation, now we no longer carry that guilt, but we have to undo whatever damage has been done, whatever injustice has been done. So in that case, maybe certain rituals are advised, or as a representative, for example, somebody's choice, somebody's right has been taken away. For example, a girl child has not been allowed to survive because she was a girl child in the earlier times, the way it happened. So maybe the constellator advises that maybe you can support a girl child, maybe you can take responsibility of somebody and help them in some way. So in that way, you are also making up for whatever wrong which has happened towards that particular individual. So there are certain practices which you can follow, affirmations, healing, and rituals which become a part of your
Post
constellation,
session.
post session.
Right now, sometime back you said there is an order of love and the love has to follow. The love is, of course, the patterns are one part of it, but is there an example that you can explain this order of love?
Yes. When we talk about a family tree, there is a hierarchy, right? So the grandfather comes before the father comes before you. So each person, or yeah, the eldest sibling is the first in the family, then the younger, then the middle one, then the younger one. So each individual has his or her own rightful place in the family tree. And when we do not give them their rightful place, for example, there is a child which was not born, there was an abortion or a miscarriage, but the child was a part of the family, but because it didn't survive, so maybe the family has forgotten, or because of grief the mother never talks about it, but it has its rightful place in the family tree. What happens is the child which comes after that sometimes takes the survivor's guilt, that I am able to enjoy whatever my sibling who did not survive, and so I feel guilty about it. This is all unconsciously, because we feel for our siblings, because we are some way or the other, that's the
Yes.
order. So if we are able to give that rightful place to that sibling, then that relieves us of the guilt which we are carrying, then we are able to live our life. Or in another case, if there is a eldest brother in the family who is probably not capable enough and does not earn well, support the family, but there's a younger one who's more capable, who becomes the earning member, so suddenly the younger one becomes the head of the family.
Yes.
And the elder one is sidelined. So in that case, what is happening is we are no longer giving respect of the eldest one, and the younger one takes, because the younger one is given that
Yes.
place. But whatever it is, because this eldest sibling has come first, we have to give him his rightful place. Whatever responsibility we are playing is maybe only as a representative of that eldest one. And when we give them their rightful place, that is what restores the order of love. Or when we say parents are the ones who give and children are the ones who receive, that's another order of love. But as we grow older, or even as we are younger children, we tend to become parent to our parents because
Yes.
of our insecurity, because we feel that if they are not safe, we will not be loved. And we become parent to our parents in some cases. Sometimes children become spouses to their parents because the spouse, the mother is missing or the father is missing.
Yes.
In that case, obviously, you have become that which you are not. You've become a parent to your parent, or you become a spouse to your parent. So again, the order of love is disturbed.
And that will
And that
reflect
will
on your health.
that will reflect on your health, that will reflect on your relationship. Somewhere you're holding it against the person, because whatever you do, you're not able to receive the love from the
Yes.
parent, because you are conscious about giving rather than receiving. So then when you restore the order of love, we always say a healing statement that you are my father, I am your child, you give, I receive, you are big, I am small. So these are healing statements which, when we say that and we experience them within us, that is what changes the dynamics in the family structure, and that is what restores the flow of love.
Lovely. It's so interesting to understand that, what we cause, say, the illness, just, is caused by external things. And when we get to hear sides and the stories like this, we realize that, oh, it's so internal, and it just manifests into a physical illness. And there is a way to heal it. It's not always you're dependent on a medication or only that aspect, but there is a lot more to it. And it's so lovely to hear that it really works, and works wonderfully, and you're integrating that with your practices is something I'm very happy, to even see it ki, yes, there is a life beyond the medication that we take.
True.
And there is a world beyond the medication that we take, and let's look at us holistically, us, ourselves, our mind, body, our family, our ancestrals, everything. We are looking at it in a more holistically manner, and that is so lovely to see. Thank you so much, sharing this very different angle with people, and also a big thank you from audience for you to actually integrate these practices in your your homeopathic practices, because I'm sure it must be challenging. I mean, on the other side, for you to integrate, it's not easy. People, you need to really believe in them and actually to create that stream differently now, which is for like you're practicing for last 15 years, so it's settled. But for you, I'm sure it must be challenging.
Maybe in the initial years when people were not aware, but now over the years, because I have been practicing this for the last 12 13 years now, and people know. And also the moment you start experiencing this yourself, you start talking about it, you also create a field where like-minded people come to you, so you naturally attract patients who are eager to heal themselves rather than depending upon medication. And that's the whole beauty, that when see that such things are possible and they start experiencing it themselves, then they start spreading the word around. So it's more a matter of experiencing it and then sharing it with people. And you're doing a wonderful job by creating awareness about all these therapies amongst your audience, which will really help. Family constellation is not something which is used only for healing families. There are also family dynamics, but it is also used to help organizations. So when there are organizational dynamics where people find it difficult to relate amongst the cadres of the organization, in that case also family constellation helps. In some countries like Brazil, they use it in the court of law to solve certain cases, because certain aspects can be revealed, certain secrets, certain things which are hidden can be revealed in a constellation. So you may not know, because when you're talking about ancestors, something which has happened maybe 2-3 generations earlier is not known to you. Likewise, in maybe a legal case, if there's something which has happened which is unknown, which is like a mystery, then in that case you are able to understand. So we had a very interesting case where one of the participants in the retreat spoke about having a stepmother, and the father had apparently bequeathed all the property to the stepmother, and the person felt that there was a lot of injustice which was happening, and felt that the will had been changed. So we were able to tap into the field and understand that yes, there was another will which was there, which is with the family, and maybe if that will can be procured, then the whole legal tangle can be solved. So can help in these ways also. So.
Wow, that's another angle to the whole process only. And this is something which is practiced. It's so good to know that it's been practiced and taken with has its own standing.
Yeah, legally it is accepted by governments, so it is a genuine science and not just
No, but if it is helping, at the end of the day, it's helping individual, then whether it's a genuine science or it comes from a, like we say, wisdom, the old wisdom, as long as it's helping, that's the biggest proof that you need. I mean, nothing else is required. But thank you so much for sharing all these details with us, and how the whole family constellation works in your healing process. And like you said, your first statement, it's important to take a responsibility of your own healing. And I'm sure today viewers would take that and get little more motivated. No, I have to do it. So choose yourself and choose better, choose wiser. So thank you so much. And it was lovely having you and having this conversation. Thank you.